I recently taught a lesson in which the student asked about buzzing, or more specifically, how I incorporate buzzing the mouthpiece into my practice. As a brass player, the topic of buzzing is likely one you have considered. Depending on who you speak with or what articles or pedagogical materials you've read, you have likely noted the high degree of subjectivity and citing of anecdotal evidence. This ongoing debate on whether or not to buzz is fueled by the undeniable fact that equally talented and successful musicians subscribe to each camp, the buzzers versus the non-buzzers. Although the argument's inconclusive nature may confuse some, it speaks volumes about the necessity of knowing one's needs and being open-minded to previously unexplored approaches. Before we continue, mouthpiece, rim, and free buzzing, if one chooses to do so, should be done in a relaxed and free-flowing way and not as a feat of athleticism. Furthermore, keep these sessions short, possibly 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 minutes. By removing the back pressure and compression provided by your instruments, the small and delicate muscles around the embouchure can quickly tire, especially in the early, less efficient stages of development. Naturally, time spent on a mouthpiece can increase as healthier habits form. There are different yet complementary ways of thinking about buzzing the mouthpiece, from a systematic study such as buzzing long tones, to a tool used to isolate specific issues away from the instruments, to a means of creating stronger musical connections, not from the lips to the horn, but one step further, from the mind to the lips. Although not identical to mouthpiece buzzing, similar to how for most of us mouthpiece buzzing is not identical to playing your instruments, singing is a comparable way of strengthening the skill of recreating strong and compelling musical thoughts away from the horn. My relationship with mouthpiece buzzing is use it if you need it. I don't claim to be a great singer, but it is my experience that I am more comfortable and perhaps more capable of expressing musical ideas through singing than I am via buzzing. Because of this, I incorporate a lot of singing into my daily life. This can take on many forms, such as singing my favorite pop tunes, singing a solo I am working on my way to work, or singing passages or excerpts during a practice session. With that said, I have revisited mouthpiece buzzing time and time again, especially as an auxiliary means of overcoming injury, both physically, such as getting over a persistent double buzz, and psychologically, such as creating a healthier relationship with the tuba by isolating specific issues away from it. Though I have never been one to strongly advocate or prescribe mouthpiece buzzing to students, the fact that I return to it occasionally in my own studies may be a telling sign. It is my thought that as long as your methodology has a strong element of creation or active mind, and recreation, or presenting your musical ideas in an audible sense through singing or buzzing, that you are in some way exercising a similar area of the brain. I always tell students to be infinitely better up here than on your tuba, in essence creating the proverbial hanging carrots. Buzzing, singing, listening, and studying engage and exercise the mind away from the technical and often domineering demands of playing a brass instrument. When the idea of making this video came to mind, my thought immediately went to a masterclass I participated in years ago, where I played for the University of Oregon tuba and euphonium professor Michael Grose. Professor Grose is one of the most thoughtful musicians I've worked with. He has accumulated a wealth of knowledge about this very topic via his research and his invaluable YouTube video series, Tuba People TV. Please enjoy Professor Michael Grose and his thoughts on mouthpiece buzzing.
There are four main reasons that I like to buzz the mouthpiece, to play the mouthpiece, and also why I teach it. One is that it allows artistry and style to develop without the barriers of the slide technique or the valve technique. It's an instrument, and so you don't have to be worried about the coordination of the valves or the slide with the buzzing. Buzzing develops a stronger connection between the ear, the sound you have in your mind, the pitch in the mind, and the embouchure, the lips. So it's connecting the conceptual with reality. It develops a more resonant tone, buzzing does, as you thicken up the air column and you get more lip surface lateral lip surface vibrating inside the cup of the mouthpiece, you'll find that you'll develop a more resonant sound. It'll be easier, so you get a better sound for less effort. And then also the tactile response, it allows you to actually make improvements on the instrument because you're using the mouthpiece. So when we pick up our instruments, there's a whole bunch of neural pathways that light up in the brain that represent all the good things and all the less good things that we do on the instrument. And so this happens whenever we pick up our instrument. But when we pick up the mouthpiece, those same sets of neural pathways don't light up or don't get as strong in the brain. And so this allows for new things to happen that you can do on the mouthpiece, and then through the use of repetition and imagination, you can take them to the instrument, and you can achieve improvement on the instrument by more or less going around the existing things that you don't like as well about your playing. You can implement new things that you want to do in your playing, and you can do that because the tactile response on the mouthpiece is not the same as it is with the instrument. One of the objections that I often hear to playing the mouthpiece, to mouthpiece buzzing, is it's not exactly like playing the instrument, and this is very true. And usually that objection is part of a conversation about something to do with with Arnold Jacobs and his teaching, and Arnold Jacobs didn't actually say that it was buzzing the mouthpiece was exactly like playing the instrument. He said it was close enough to playing the instrument that there was pedagogical value, that there was value in improvement. You could actually get something that would out of playing the mouthpiece that you could then take to the instrument, and you would get some improvement on the instrument. So it's definitely not exactly like playing the instrument. Buzzing the mouthpiece is not, but it's close enough that there's some value to it. In terms of incorporating the mouthpiece playing into the routine, what I generally do is just play 2 or 3 minutes on the mouthpiece before I start practicing the tuba, and then I'll interject buzzing phrases if I'm having a difficult time, with the just getting the right pitches to be real precise. Then I'll practice buzzing on the mouthpiece to really hone in the pitch. I will do this, interject it throughout a practice session. And if it's been a particularly hard day, maybe a Bruckner symphony or a long week with a Mahler symphony or something, I might play some low notes on the mouthpiece. But generally, I'll reserve the warm down to really to just the instrument itself, middle and low register, long notes, long tones on the instrument for a warm down. I don't do too much warm down on the mouthpiece. In terms of just buzzing before I practice, it's always with melodies. I don't buzz in drill forms. So, for example, I don't do that. In the book, the Hal Leonard Advanced Band Method book, with special studies by Arnold Jacobs for the tuba, he wrote that in the early 60s, and it actually did have mouthpiece drills. By the time I saw him, started studying with him in 1981, he had really moved away from mouthpiece drill recommendations in favor of melodies, of just tunes. And I think the reason for that is because he probably saw how the students, when he taught mouthpiece playing as a drill form activity, he saw a disconnect between the technical side of the musician's mind and the more musical, artistic side of the musician's mind, and he really wanted there to be music all the time. A lot of times people think of Arnold Jacobs as the breathing guy, but really he was the music guy. And so many times people came to his studio who were all they were all really tight through poor respiration habits, poor breathing habits that just made them all tight. So he would work on that, but it was all always in the service of, or with the goal of becoming a better artist, being able to express one's artistry more easily. So I just buzz tunes. So I'm just buzzing melodies on the mouthpiece, and it's usually just whatever comes to mind that morning or that day, whenever it is. There's no real order or anything like that. I try to make them, usually I try to slur when I'm buzzing because I do a lot of articulating on the tuba already. So articulating practice, articulating repetition is already being covered on a regular basis. And so I try to focus on getting air to the lips via the slur, and that can be a really helpful thing just for the overall tone and the resonance of the sound. In terms of like other kinds of practicing, like do I buzz my concertos or solos? I can definitely I'll be buzzing them when I'm practicing them with the instrument. I'll take phrases and I'll buzz them on the mouthpiece to get them a little bit more lively, a bit more resonant, a little more accurate in the pitches and the articulations and those sorts of things. In terms of like the length of playing the mouthpiece, there really is if you're doing it well and just easily, there really isn't a time limit any more than you would on the instrument. So maybe I'm not going to probably play the mouthpiece for more than a half an hour at a time, but it's usually like 3, 4, 5 minutes. But if I'm doing something like that, it's just sort of a mezzo forte dynamic, lots of air, it's easy. I'm not going to hurt myself by doing that. It's those situations where maybe you're doing on the mouthpiece what would be considered on the instrument like fortissimo. That would definitely cause damage on the mouthpiece by doing it on the mouthpiece, just as it would cause damage by doing lots, a long time on the instrument if in that volume, without a break. So really, what you can do on the mouthpiece is pretty much what you can do on the tuba, and what you can do on the tuba is pretty much what you can do on the mouthpiece. The idea is to keep it easy, resonant, flowing with air. Really attentive to just resonance and being communicative from an artistic standpoint. Everything you do on the instrument, you want to try and do on the mouthpiece. The mouthpiece really is an instrument, and something that Jacobs taught was to play concerts on the mouthpiece, not literal walk out on a Carnegie Hall stage, play concerts, but with your friends and everything, you can just play for each other on the mouthpiece. And in this way, you're always putting your mind on what is artistically important. You're focusing your thoughts on the art, the artistry, and just realize that the art that is coming out of the instrument bell, really it starts in the mind, and then it comes down the seventh cranial nerve to the lip region, and it enters into the mouthpiece cup. And then once it's in the mouthpiece cup, it's history, and it's all acoustics after that. So really strive to be an artist on the mouthpiece, and you will see an explosion in artistic quality on the instrument. Now, is buzzing for everyone? I interviewed around 140 students of Mr. Jacobs for the Tuba People TV project that you can find on YouTube. And not everybody said that he had them buzz their mouthpiece. It wasn't a uniform thing. Most people did, because there was some common issues amongst those people, those students. But not everybody expressed Mr. Jacobs recommending that they need to buzz their mouthpiece. So if this was all functioning well and it was really resonant here and you were getting a great sound already, then he didn't necessarily recommend that you needed to do that. It was something you can do, and it wouldn't hurt you if you did, but it was not like you have to do this or you won't be good. Some people came to him already playing very well, and they did not buzz their mouthpieces for him. They were not asked to buzz their mouthpiece for him at all. So it certainly is potentially for everybody, but it's not a requirement. And as I can tell you that when I first went to Jacobs in 1981, I did not play the mouthpiece at all. I found it very difficult. It was extremely dissatisfying. It was hard. I didn't sound good. It took a lot of air. It was just not good. And so he, in those initial lessons, recommended that I play the mouthpiece. I resisted that. He was very kind and in his patient in his persuasion. And a few months later, I did start to buzz the mouthpiece. And man, the improvement trajectory really took off. So that was for me something that showed me that this really is something that's great. And then when I started teaching, and I would recommend the same thing to my students in those early years of my teaching, it was like, wow, this really is a thing. It really does work. It wasn't just me. It's like a thing. It's a human thing. And so that was a really informative time of my life in terms of mouthpiece playing as being really quite helpful. Sometimes I'm asked what's the difference between buzzing and singing, and really they're very related, because the part of the brain where the singer is conceiving of pitch and timbre is the same part of the brain where we as brass players can conceive of those things as well. It's just the difference is with the singer, that information goes from that part of the brain down the laryngeal nerve to the larynx. But with the brass player, that information goes down the seventh cranial nerve to the lip region. But they start in the same place, in the mind. So really, in my early lessons with Jacobs, there was sort of an order. If I was having trouble with a phrase, he would stop. Can you buzz that phrase? Okay, I would try to buzz it. And as I mentioned before, I was not a very good buzzer initially, and I was resistant to it. So my buzzing wasn't very good. And then if I couldn't buzz it, then he would say, can you sing it? And so he had a little keyboard in the studio, and he generated some pitches, and then we work on singing. And so once I was able to then sing it, then we would take it back to the mouthpiece, and then we would take it back to the horn. And this progression was always very successful, and it's something that I teach my students and have been teaching my students for decades. In terms of students and young folks, just playing the mouthpiece is something. It's just so such an easy way, as I mentioned before, it's an easy way to really learn how to express yourself artistically and start to think in artistic ways. You're not a tuba player or a trumpet player or a trombone player. You are an artist who happens to express themselves through the trumpet, through the tuba, through the trombone, through the horn, and through the euphonium. And so the benefit of just learning how to be comfortable singing on the mouthpiece, playing the mouthpiece, is such a great thing. And then all the items that I mentioned before, with the increased sound, the thicker or a more lateral amount of lip surface vibrating in the cup of the mouthpiece as it relates to the relative thickness of the airflow that is coming to the embouchure is a really great thing to develop on the instrument. And something that you really want to keep in mind is there's buzzing tone, and then there's buzzing tone. And I really encourage my students to become a connoisseur of buzzing tone, just like a sommelier, a wine expert is really sees a glass of red wine and knows that there's more than just one type of red wine. There's so many varieties of red wine, and that's the case with mouthpiece buzzing. So just to go. Okay, that's a buzz, But what happens if we make that a bigger sound? So you can imagine that that sound going into the instrument is then just being amplified by the instrument. So if you send in a really small, tiny sound, yeah, it's going to come out the other end of the instrument, out the bell, bigger. But if you send in that second way of buzzing, that sound is going to be much wider, much more massive, much more resonant. And so that's why it's important to really understand that there are different qualities, there are different types of sound that we make on the mouthpiece, and you really want to be attuned to that, and not just go for whatever sound happens to come out of the mouthpiece. Really become a connoisseur of the sounds that you're making on the mouthpiece, and just as you do on your instrument. So it's a really great thing to be focused on, just being focused on sound. And in Mr. Jacobs' studio, sound was where it was at. Just about everything he did was related to sound. As far as overdoing it on the mouthpiece, I covered this a little bit, but if you're gonna play with too little air, or you're gonna play really loudly a lot, or maybe above the staff a lot, just like on the instrument, if you do it a lot and you don't balance it out with other types of playing, then yeah, you're gonna that can lead to some issues. And so it's just common sense. It's common sense in terms of what how to approach the mouthpiece, just like common sense with how to approach the instrument. So I hope these few little tidbits of information about playing the mouthpiece have been helpful. I really am always reminded of the quote that my friend and former college colleague at Northwestern University, Rex Martin, said at I think it was at iTech 2016 in Knoxville, University of Tennessee. It was shortly after he gave a master class that was shortly after Christian Lindbergh had made a statement about mouthpiece buzzing, and so there was all a buzz. That topic was, and somebody asked Rex Martin in that class what he thought about mouthpiece buzzing, and he said, and I think this is a really great response. He said that playing the mouthpiece, buzzing the mouthpiece, is kind of like wearing an overcoat in Chicago during the winter. You don't really need to wear a winter coat in Chicago in the winter, but it sure is helpful if you do. And so I agree with that sentiment, and I've been using the buzzing and teaching the buzzing for the last 43 years, and I've seen it help virtually every one of my students, and it certainly has helped me. So, thank you.